And from the top of West Mountain in Scranton, Pennsylvania, good morning, everybody. This is 94.3 FM, The Talker, Sanity Check, Libertarian Lou, Tea Party Mike. X will be joining us. Frank Sorek is in studio, and you want to start your weekend off right, as always, blow off a little steam, you could give us a call. It's 888-577-4487, 888-577-4487. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning. You know, I have some Obamacare stories for our listeners.
Thank you.
And I just would like to see this happen. See, Obamacare was supposed to be Affordable Care Act. I believe that's what he was calling it. But let me tell you how affordable.
I think you missed the in unaffordable.
Maybe unattainable.
There you go.
Would be better. It would be better. But here's how it goes down. Before the Affordable Care Act, I'd pay a few $100s a month for the family and myself. All of a sudden we're, my employer is doing a fair job and paying my $450 a month part, but then I have another $1,000 a month of premium payments.
You do now, Michael?
I do. So now I have to come up with $1,000 a month to insure my family. Good insurance, fair enough.
I hope so.
I'm pretty much covered until I have to have what they call a carpal tunnel repair, which is just repairing the nerves in the hands. They became numb, and it's very common. Well, then I found out I had a $4,000 deductible. So along with my $1,000 a month, there's a $4,000 deductible that I had to pay out of pocket. Oh, so there goes to the Affordable Care Act again. For who? I'm not quite sure. And then when the ICE finally hits the other day, when I'm doing my taxes, and the accountant calls me up and says, you owe $500. Why? Because you went 4 months without insurance, and that's the penalty.
Get out of here.
I was almost ready to march myself down to Washington, and you would see me on the news today. Now, I just ask the folks that are out there listening, I know that's not everybody's scenario, but, this to me is truly just spreading the wealth, Lou. That is all this is taking from those that have to take to those that don't. And some of it is very good. There are people out there that certainly require that. But to take so much from a hardworking family to $12,000 for your premium, $4,000 for my surgery, $500 for taxes, all of a sudden we're looking at thousands of dollars coming out of an income. And, so all of a sudden, standards of living begin to drop for everybody. The middle class is getting whacked with all this stuff. And, I'll tell you, I just hope that all these candidates that are coming out that are running for president, the Ted Cruz, the Rand Paul, I hope they really understand and really make an effort to attack, because I hear, okay, we have to work the economy, we have to work on this. Well, I keep hearing all the promises about going after Obamacare, and I sure hope that is not lost in the fray of all the other chaos that this president has created. So, that's my
tale of woe to start out with.
How angry I am, as a hardworking individual, to have to continue to pay for Obama's nonsense. And I don't think we've even seen the tip of it yet. If this is going to continue to get worse with Obamacare and everything else that he's burdened America with.
Well, I've got good news for you. Hillary has announced she's running for president. She's going to fix things. You remember Hillary Care? She will smooth this over like it's nobody's business. Michael, if you haven't paid attention with the amount of emails that this woman sent on her multiple devices, I'm telling you right here and now, she can fix this. Don't worry. Just trust in Hillary.
Well, the thing of it is, I'm not even really sure what Hillary stands for, Frank, because, she stands for corruption.
She tells us that sometimes she stands for this, sometimes she stands for that. Depends which way the wind's blowing. But don't worry, Hillary will eventually get around to your side of things.
And what?
It becomes very, very frustrating when I look at Hillary and say, she might be better than Obama.
Well,
the bar's not real high, Michael. Come on. A trained SEAL could do a better job than Obama.
And what has she accomplished, Michael? That was one of the other questions.
She got rid of those emails like it was nobody's business. A fart in the wind, disappeared, gone.
Folks, we want to let you know, too, today we kind of wide open, Michael. We do have some calls coming in later on today talking about Rand Paul and being down there this past week. But overall, we've touched on so many subjects the last couple of weeks. Want to let our listeners know, feel free to call in and talk about whatever's on your mind today, because kind of a little bit more of a free-for-all. Michael, you mentioned about this Affordable Care Act, and here's another thing that came up. I went for some blood tests not too long ago, just a general checkup, and I get a bill in the mail, and it's $100 bill. Okay, they said that's what my insurance still owed on it.
They sent you $100 in the mail?
No, just hold on here. Actually, what they charged, okay, what was part of this, Michael? This was really threw me off. It was just for the regular blood test. I think it was close to $2,500. Okay, and then they said there was some kind of discount, and then they said I still only owed $100. So I said, wait a minute, what's going on here with this? Why would they charge $2,500? So if I had $2,500, would they charge me $2,500? And then I went back to the place where it's actually at the hospital, and I said, wait a minute, I paid what you told me I was going to pay. Now you come back and you just bill me whatever. So, I mean, if my insurance deductible was, say, like yours, $4,000 or $2,500, would they charge me $2,500 for my blood test? And then because I've disputed it, it went to their credit agency. So I called the credit agency, and of course the credit agency is owned by the same people that did the blood tests.
How convenient.
How convenient. And once again, it was just one of those things where, how do you fight this stuff? And like yourself or anybody out there, how do you fight this? And then you now dispute this with a credit agency that is owned by, they said, well, no, we went back to the people that did the tests, and they claim that this was a legitimate charge. And I said, okay, well, you own the same company. I mean, how is that fair? But this whole idea of Obamacare and where we're going with this is a little bit scary. And on the way in here, exactly what you just said was the exact same thought. It seemed like this whole Obamacare is off the table. It's like we're not really hearing about it anymore.
No, we're not hearing about it anymore. And I'm also let our listeners aware. This is probably, maybe a year ago. Just general checkups came to Texas. Thought I better get a doctor, and they wanted me to go for this particular test, just part of turning 50 and blah blah blah. Beyond 50 now, but the hospital called and said, before you have this test, we want to make sure that your insurance covered it, and it does not. So it's going to be $2,500. Would you like to put that on your charge card today? And I said, no, cancel the test.
Right.
Well, you have to call your doctor to cancel that test. So I called them. I said to the office, look, I'm not paying $2,500 for this test. I refuse to do it. And they said, well, just a minute. They come back a few minutes later and say, would you mind going directly to the doctor's office? No, I don't have a problem. I don't need anything fancy. Oh, if you're willing to do that, it's $600.
It's unbelievable, now, isn't it, Mike? Yeah.
So it is completely unbelievable. How could the same test at a different location be $1,900 less?
Blue light special. You remember those blue lights? They're back at the doctor's office now.
They are. Now, the good part of that, Frank, is that, okay, wait a minute. Maybe there's a little site of free marketplace here that, you can actually go out and shop to get the best price. So I want everybody to know out there that just because it's one price at one hospital or one doctor's office, don't think that's the standard. It's not like going to the gas station. Everybody's got the same price.
Michael, you've given me a great idea here. Walmart Wellness Centers. Come on, Walmart. Let's go.
Well, Frank, if you look, you'll see that CVS is doing exactly that.
Ooh.
They're no longer CVS Pharmacy, Frank. They're CVS Health.
There we go.
So now you can go to some locations of CVS.
I can buy my cigarettes, milk, and colonoscopy all in one place. How joyful.
Well, you just hope that the pharmacist who's counting your pills isn't doing the colonoscopy too. This is some of the things, but this is where the Affordable Care Act has also. There's little access to physicians and providers that have put so many people on the rolls without allowing us to adapt to the need. And so this continues to get worse. It's, as Lou had mentioned earlier, Frank, that it's not being talked about in the media. We're talking about ISIS, we're talking about the economy, we're talking about Hillary and all her corruption, but no more. And I blame the Republican Party for that, the establishment in Washington, because they feel that it is a complete liability to the Republican Party. So what they would rather do, Frank, is to do nothing. And those candidates that come out and talk about Obamacare and getting rid of Obamacare, or at the very least changing some of its insanity, are bashed. How dare you? But this is what the American people want. We have seen what it's doing, and we're fearful it's going to get even worse. So we need to continue to get onto our candidates and let them not forget that Obamacare is killing at the very least, the middle class. And so this is just something that was on my heart this morning, and just to make people, and I'm just curious if anybody else out there has experienced things that I've experienced. It really puts, all of a sudden that, a couple $1,000 you were going to put into your child's college fund is no longer available. All of a sudden that, nice to spend some time with your family and take a nice little vacation, unavailable. All of a sudden you need your car repaired, which is very important, unavailable. And so this is what Obamacare has done and is going to continue to do unless it's dealt with.
And Michael, one of the problems here, and maybe I didn't explain it exactly the right way here, is that just like you were talking about the cost of those tests, you went from $2,500 to $600. I wasn't even given that opportunity. All of a sudden, I get a bill in the mail that said they charged, and I don't know where that charge went to, but to get a simple blood test was $2,500. Right. And then, of course, they discounted that down based on my insurance. Well, what happens if that insurance had a large deductible? Then is that what the legitimate charge is going to be? And when you don't even know that, it's not like you could go in there and you get the pricing on these things. It's really pretty. It's a little crazy. That's all.
You can shop around. I mean, as Michael pointed out, I had a friend who was looking to have an MRI done. And the hospital said, well, just call up and schedule. So she called up to the MRI place, and they said this was the price. And she thought,
this is crazy.
Right? She couldn't afford that because she did have a $3,000 deductible. So the cost of the test would have been, pretty much her deductible. She would have been paying out of pocket. So she called around and found a place that would do the same test, $1,200. Right. So again, you can shop around, but most people don't know that.
Yeah, one of the things too, Frank, and being so close to the border of Mexico and seeing a lot of things that you guys see on TV, but to actually seeing new faces and where they're coming from and where they're passing through. And, I have to tell you, folks, I get really angry when to find out that I got to come up with $4,000 for my deductible, $1,000 a month, and then you're seeing illegal immigration coming across this border, and we're paying them to do it. And this is, if that doesn't make most Americans angry, I don't know what will. Because here are not even citizens of America who are getting Social Security payments, Frank. So we've got to take money out of our pocket for Obamacare, and now we've got to take money out of our pocket to an administration who refuses to deal with illegal immigration. And it just seems to domino from one policy of Obama to the next policy, which inevitably ends up taking money out of our pockets, taking money and all the things that we felt dear and enjoyed working hard for is no longer there. And I myself am surprised that we don't see some outrage of Americans as they begin to experience what Obamacare is going to do for them.
Well, Michael, the reason you're not seeing the outrage and the reason this administration doesn't want to deal with it is because where you see illegal immigrants today, I see Democratic voters tomorrow.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, Frank. There's absolutely no doubt. And as a matter of fact, as they begin to change the laws and the rules, those Democratic voters become even greater. Now, I will tell you that there are some that come to this nation that do it the right way, who are truly here not for the handout, but for the opportunity that they might be able to work hard and get somewhere. But, Frank, what I'm hoping is that we see a group of folks, those who did it right, those who came from Mexico, those who came from Honduras, and realized, like, you know what? This American dream doesn't exist here anymore. This is the only American dream is for those who have decided to do nothing. And this is what I'm hoping that maybe this just might backfire on them. Because we do see, I have some friends here in Texas who are just the next generation. You know, Dad came over here legally. Now they're working. And guess what? They're not Democrats, Frank. They're Republicans, or at least on some form of conservative movement. So this just might, in the end, backfire on the Democratic Party.
Michael, this past week we were where were we? We've been traveling all over the place, but we were certainly down at the Rand Paul announcement. And so when we take a break, when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about Rand Paul. And just yesterday, listening to MSNBC, Michael Steele was on, and he mentioned, this really caught me off guard, the most dangerous man in politics is Rand Paul, because he can pull from all sides. And that's something that I want to talk about. And so we'll be back. You listen to Sanity Check on 94.3 FM, The Talker.
Saturday mornings, 94.3 FM, The Talker.
Just know you're not alone, 'cause I'm gonna make this place your home.
This is your home, 94.3 FM, The Talker, Sanity Check, Libertarian Lou, Tea Party Mike. We got X on the line. Frank Sorek is in studio. Michael, this past week, we were at the Rand Paul announcement. Folks are starting to announce all over the place running for president. And the individual who gave the invocation at the announcement, Pastor Jerry Stephenson, was really he was swamped with all the media and people coming up to him and talking about why he is supporting Rand Paul. He is a pastor of the church down there, the Midwest Church of Christ, and being a former Democrat and now an independent, and given that invocation, certainly gave some indication of maybe why they are afraid of the message of Rand Paul and the ability that he has to go into the urban areas and maybe get support where typically a Republican would not. So I would like to welcome Pastor Jerry Stephenson. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us this early in the morning.
Well, good morning to you, and good to be with you.
Yeah, I certainly it was there was a great crowd down there, and certainly you were swamped by the media along with J.C. Watts, and certainly some of the stuff that I had heard, about Rand Paul coming out of the media just was not true. So why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself, Pastor, and what your history is with Rand Paul, and perhaps why you find him to be somebody that you not only supporting but supporting enthusiastically.
Well, I think first of all we've come to know that Rand Paul is a man who says what he means and means what he says. His word is his bond, and his bond is his word. That is important to those of us who are in the faith community, in recognizing that we're working with children and others who are really troubled with many political speeches where people come and they make great promises but never are able to deliver on them. We've come to know Senator Paul before he made his decision to run for the United States Senate. In 2008, we met him at a Tea Party event, and it was there in 2009 he come and visited our Village Learning and Development Center, where we are working with low-income, working-class families to provide educational enrichment to those children who are attending failing schools in West Louisville. So that's our history as to why, how we come to know him. And he comes and meets with the families every year and sits down and listens to the parents. And so these are the things that are important to us. So the question becomes, why then do we support him? Well, first of all, education is the number one issue in our community. It is the civil rights issue of the 21st century. We have in our church community 81% of the children in the fourth grade are reading below standard. So if you don't get education right, you're not going to get anything right. And Senator Paul supports parental choice. We can no longer go down the same Democratic strategy of one size fits all. We must have charter schools, and we must parents must have the option of sending their children to a private school, a private church school, homeschooling. Whatever a parent decides, and Senator Paul supports that. He supports it. Secondly, he supports bringing economic development to our depressed inner city areas with his economic freedom zones. We think that's going to be a good thing for our working class, low income families. And thirdly, our religious freedom. Senator Paul believes in liberty, and I believe he will fight to the end for our religious freedom. And those are the three areas that I believe are important to the African American community, and it's for those three reasons that I enthusiastically support Senator Rand Paul.
You know, we spoke a little bit yesterday, and certainly we had an opportunity to speak on Tuesday. And one of the things that we had talked about is you were a lifelong Democrat, and you have switched over to being independent. You're not Republican, but when we talked about who you were supporting, and I'm the same way, Pastor, is that you're looking at the individual. So depending, it's not like all of a sudden that you switched over to necessarily Republican candidates, but you're looking at the individual. And one of those with Rand Paul, this is not like a Johnny-come-lately that all of a sudden he just showed up but he's not only at Ferguson, Detroit, West Louisville. He's been talking about the prison system, court reforms. These are all important, very important issues besides the economic and educational issues that affect the urban areas.
Yes, I think I might have said Tuesday that I told Senator Paul when we met that most of the people that you're supporting and working with for education, they really aren't they're really not going to go out and vote for you. He said, "Well, I understand that, but I'm going to support what they need because it's the right thing to do." And I said, "Now you come down here, you're not going to be warmly welcomed." He said, "Well, but I'm still coming." I told him, I said, "Man, you're crazy, but I like it." He come and one of the things he did was he got the Republican Party to open up a office in West Louisville. Okay, and the Democrats have been taking the West Louisville for granted for so long. They don't have an office in West Louisville, and when they opened it, all that was so. It really upset all of the Democrats in West Louisville. And I said, praise the Lord.
There you go. Hey, Michael, I'll let you join in on this, too, and if you have a question for the pastor. But one of the things, certainly, you know, you were talking about defending your religious rights. And, Michael, I know that's something that you take very close to heart and dear also.
Well, you know, and I do, and I'm sure, Pastor, you know, here in Texas and in Houston, it wasn't so long ago when the mayor of Houston decided that every pastor had a hand in what they were going to speak about on the Sunday coming up. You know, and I am not a pastor, but first of all, I'm an American, and to ask my pastor to do something like that, to me, is beyond communism. That is, fortunately, she was overturned and asked to reverse that. But if we were to allow that to happen, Pastor, here in America, just once, I think it would be the start of even worse things to come. And it's, you know, and then, but what are your feelings on that, Pastor? Have you seen any government?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's, it showed, number one, that if you don't pay attention to the people that you elect, okay,
right,
and you don't ask the right questions from those individuals, you're going to be subject to getting exactly what is happening. Our religious freedoms are under attack and has been for the last 25 to 30 years in this country. But we've been blinded under the guise of discrimination. You know, homosexuality has absolutely nothing to do with civil rights.
Right.
It is our civil rights movement has been hijacked, and our organizations that supposed to be watchdogs for our civil rights have been totally bought off and prostituted. And I guess if there's anything that we need to do that really turned me off from the Democratic Party is the way they have exploited our civil rights movement in this country.
Pastor, one of the things I haven't had an opportunity, like I said prior coming on to the show or here, is I've been on the road, so I really haven't had a lot of opportunity to see how the media has taken on Rand Paul since his announcement. Do you have any insight in how the media has presented who Rand Paul is? I took note certainly and made sure that I recorded a lot of the interviews that were going on, and you and me had talked about that a little bit also. But then I also heard an awful lot about pacifism and isolationists, and that's just not the case. And once again, I mean, what do you have to, what would you say to how the media is covering the message of Rand Paul?
Well, I think certainly they have. I think the thing they're trying to do with Rand Paul is to marginalize him and to trivialize his stance on many issues, and so that's the biggest thing that I see that they're doing. They do fear him, and they fear him because. You notice on that stage that day now that J.C. Watts was on that stage.
Yeah.
J.C. Watts is a black man, just in case folk didn't know that. and just in case your audience doesn't know, I'm a black preacher. Okay, and on that stage was a war veteran who is now handicapped without legs because he gave his country his best, and then there was a little blind child who this little girl, she sang like a bird, and there on that stage was a young college queen, beautiful young lady that do you know Rand Paul? Senator Rand Paul was the only white man that was up on that stage. Now that's a whole different ball game for the Republican Party, and as a result of that, they didn't want to acknowledge. They didn't even acknowledge who was on that stage with Senator Rand Paul.
You're right.
The reason for that is they want to marginalize him. They do not want to demonstrate that blacks blacks are supporting Senator Rand Paul.
And that's one of the things I definitely noticed. And of course, I know I took also note of the interview that you were doing with BBC. And I mentioned to you also that I made sure that was recorded. And once again, because of some statements that you might have made, first of all, they go right after that. They're not going after, they go after the messenger, not necessarily the message. And once again, and we know what we're talking about because you even questioned a little bit about perhaps maybe Obama's faith. But I think there's a lot of folks that question that. But what does that have to do? Don't you have a right to have your own opinion? How does that tie into?
Well, that's where my religious freedom comes from. Okay, I have. This is the United States of America. I thought we ought to be able to have our individual beliefs without being attacked. In fact, President Obama's faith never was on my discussion. It came up as a byproduct from one of the reporters, and I'm not sure from which place, but either BBC or this
BuzzFeed. No, anyway, I was actually I was actually right there when
come at me. Well, don't you think President Obama is a Christian? Well, hello. Who am I to judge him? He judges himself. I don't judge him. He says he's a Christian, and I'll let that be.
Yes,
so it's always I got your questions, and like I told them, I've been in this ball game a pretty good long time. I'm not a novice when it comes to this kind of a thing. So public policy. So that's where we are, and I appreciate being able to be with you guys this morning.
Well, thank you for calling in and certainly, even bringing out some of these points that we're bringing out. Maybe that's why Michael Steele, former Republican chairman there, said that Rand Paul might be the most dangerous man in politics today, only because he does have support of folks like you. And so thank you so much for joining us this morning, Pastor. And we'll be talking as we move along into this, into the political realm here. So thanks for calling in today.
God bless you, man.
God bless you. And we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we got X and whatever else is on your mind. You listen to 94.3 FM, The Talker.
Standard and Talk Radio. Saturday mornings, 94.3 FM, The Talker.
'Cause though the truth may vary, this ship will carry our bodies safe to shore. Don't listen to a word I say.
That's what I say.
listen.
Don't listen to a word we say. Do your own research. 94.3 FM, The Talk, Sanity, Chef, Libertarian Lou, Tea Party Mike, X, and Frank. Good morning, X.
Guys, how you doing?
We're doing good. Hey, you just heard the interview with Pastor Jerry Stephenson and Rand Paul. One of the things I heard down there an awful lot also, X, and it was Cameron. That name just Carl Cameron was. I was squished in between Fox and Bloomberg, and just had an opportunity to listen kind of what was going on. But I kept hearing the word pacifist. I kept hearing the word isolationist. And X, you probably heard a little bit more, once again, me being on the road, but maybe some of the media coverage of how they're trying to pigeonhole Rand Paul because he doesn't have maybe that neocon thought process.
Yeah, I mean, the tools that will be used to take him down by the establishment will be to use certain words and phrases that are basically taken out of context or misdirection tools. So the most common that you'll hear is Rand Paul or libertarians are isolationists.
Right.
And isolation, the best thing is always remember, isolationist would be North Korea, but non-interventionist would be Switzerland. So I almost feel like the candidate should probably say we should follow a policy more like Switzerland, unlike my opponents that want to be, interventionists and believe that they should be able to go anywhere in the world and do whatever they want to, even though the Constitution does not give any authorization for that. But the irony of most of the interventionists out there is the same people that tell you that the government can't run the dog catching department at the local level somehow think that the United States can manage world affairs from half a world away, dealing with groups that are into tribalism for crying out loud, to begin with most of their social flaws, so to speak. But it is crazy though that the amount it's almost duplicitous in their mindset that they somehow think that you can't, you're a complete mess up, and on the other they're perfect. We can rebuild in Iraq and we won't have any problems there, but somehow Detroit we can't have or fix.
Michael and X, the quad just printed last night, and we'll be printing the Wilkes-Barre paper on Monday. But we followed up a little bit on our Syria article that we printed in 2013, and we revisited some of the folks down in Allentown, who, for those who are not familiar with what we've done, is Allentown has the largest Christian Syrian community in the United States, and just revisited with them, and now they're saying, well, the policy, the policy towards Assad and Syria has kind of maybe moved to what they've been saying all along, that, it's not Assad has been the biggest, supporter or protection of the Christians in Syria, and it wasn't that support of the rebels. If you guys remember, we had McCain and a few of the others out there beating the drum. And X or Mike, I want you to jump in on this. What has happened? I mean, when you look, if they had taken out Assad, and I want to reiterate here, Senator Rand Paul echoed this view in stating, this is back a while back, I think the Islamic rebel winning is a bad idea for Christians, and all of a sudden we'll have another Islamic state where Christians are persecuted. Guys, I want you to jump in on this. I mean, what has happened in Iraq, and certainly you look at Libya and you look at Egypt, and what would have happened if, all these talking heads, all these folks that knew so much about foreign policy, we're going to hear that too, we have to have Hillary in there because somehow she's some kind of expert on foreign policy. Assad probably would have been gone by now, and who knows what would have happened to the state of Syria and the Christians that are living there.
Well, it's funny when I look at all these decisions that, like you said, the talking heads go for, and you look at, taking Gaddafi out of Libya. I was having this discussion with my children. I said, what gives a nation the ability or the decision making to decide that another nation's leader has to go. And my kids were appalled. They go, wait a minute, Dad, wait. We just go in and decide to take out the president of whatever. Yes. And Libya was an example of it. A stable government when everybody knows Gaddafi wasn't the best guy in the world, but it's the people's decision of that nation to make those changes, not America. What happens? We have a huge mess there. What happened in Egypt when Obama was backing the Muslim Brotherhood? Well, you saw how that ended up. Now we've got Christians being murdered. You see what happens in Iraq, and we continue to invade other nations with really no, they keep saying it's for national security, and I still have not seen evidence that Iraq had the ability to take America out. And so these are all the things that everybody wants to jump on board for to protect America, but we keep believing what they're telling us, and we need to start getting involved. And what I find very interesting with the pastor that was just on was, Lou, it's not just one group of people saying this. I mean, here you have a black man from the South, a pastor, a dedicated Democrat who's moved on. You have myself, a white guy in the working class who's like, stereotypical a Democrat, or I'm sorry, Republican. I am not supporting the Republican Party anymore. So I think America is starting to wake up, and these decisions are now starting to be questioned. And we need somebody like a Rand Paul who's going to stand up and ask those questions and make people aware of what the truth is.
X.
Again, the scariest part about the Middle East is this idea that we somehow think we know all there is to know about the variations within it. We keep forgetting, like what would happen if people in Pennsylvania, spoke a different language, had different customs than the people that live in, Massachusetts or New Jersey or something. And then somebody came along and said, well, we're going to mash the two of you guys together or the three of you guys together, and you're somehow supposed to become some perfect union. I mean, if it was such a perfect thing to be able to bond a lot of these groups together, wouldn't Europe be one big country right now?
Right.
I mean, something as simple as the difference between the French and the Germans from a cultural perspective. How does this, northern Iraq, middle Iraq, southern Iraq, three different regions, really. What part, and this is the arrogance that we somehow think we can settle all of these things. But again, it just proves the hubris of most of our elected officials that somehow they think they can just force things together because they want it to be that way. But it's a little bit like forcing a marriage to work when the two partners aren't in love. You're going to have problems.
And I think for example, Lou, here in Texas, we do the two-step. In Pennsylvania, you do the polka. So you can't expect somebody from Pennsylvania like me to come in knowing how to do two-step. So it's just a funny example of what X is talking about. Everybody from different areas has different ways of doing things.
Michael, I hope you're teaching them how to polka down there.
Well, we're trying, but I think my polka might be worse than the two-step right now.
Lou, I was just going to circle this back to the recent shooting that took place down in South Carolina.
Sure.
The interesting thing that stands out about where we are with the police force, it's very, very simple. You pay police officers to be the type of people that are the least likely to reach for a gun or resort to violence. See, any normal person, I don't want to be a police officer because they're more apt to ramp things up rather than ramp things down. It's that idea of these are peace officers that should be, really psychologically screened for, creating peace and conflict resolution without resorting to violence. But this is indicative of the same type of foreign policy where, we think because we can bomb a country into oblivion that we should be able to tell them what to do, push them around, use force, and I don't have to go back pretty far to just go through the list of all of the times the U.S. has been hypocritical. But God forbid, somebody was messing with U.S. politics or trying to do regime change here because they don't like who our president is. It's just crazy.
It really is crazy. We're going to take one quick break. We're kind of running a little late here today, and when we come back, we'll finish up our conversation. You listen to 94.3 FM The Talker.
Well, life will pass me by if I don't open up my eyes, so that's fine by me. So wake me up when it's all over.
That's what we say. Wake us up. There's so much to wake up, guys. I got to tell you, isn't it? It's just, it's crazy. We're back. 94.3 FM, the Talker Sanity Check. So where do we want to finish up, Michael and X, Frank? We could certainly talk a little bit more about the Middle East.
There's
so much going on.
I've been hearing everybody just stirring the pot, from Michael down there, doom and gloom in Texas, X over here in Washington, whining and complaining about this,
That's
that,
right.
and the other thing.
And things are going swimmingly well.
They're so wonderful. I mean, I don't get it. When Hillary is president, you're all going to be happy. We're going to be sitting around the proverbial campfire singing Kumbaya. Just relax, people. She can make...
That way everything's gone. We have nothing to worry about.
That's right. Michael, she can make it all your troubles disappear with one simple delete key. I'm telling you, don't worry.
It's like the Candyman can.
That's right. Hillary can.
Michael X, I don't know how anybody, seriously. I mean, I just don't know. I don't know how anybody could.
The problem is, it's this or that. I mean, X says it all the time, and he's absolutely right. It's the this or that politics. And a person like Rand Paul, who certainly is out there telling the truth and waking people up, it's going to be too little too late by the time the election comes around, because we all know it's going to be Coke or Pepsi. And right now we're looking at a Hillary or a Jeb or someone like that. And it's just ridiculous that in a country our size, with the amount of resources America has, these clowns are the best we have to choose from. So,
Michael, I hope, I really hope that, the Republican Party seriously considers Rand Paul and don't try to shove down a Jeb Bush, because seriously, I don't know. It's
what the party does. It's all backroom deals. They do not listen to the people who make up the party, the Michaels, the Frank Soreks. Those are the people who sit in the Republican Party and wonder who has hijacked our party once again.
Lou, let me I'll just throw out one thought, and that is the only Republican candidate in any head-to-head matchup with Hillary Clinton in all of the battleground states that has a chance so far has been Rand Paul. He's the one that has the higher numbers, that in a place like Ohio, that you could pull independents and Democrats over and win the state. So this is the thing that the Republicans are going to have to confront, because it's like, well, fine, yeah, you can get a Rick Perry to win 25 states, but you're not going to get him to win 30 states.
Right.
No, and that's true. But one of the things that I certainly want to end all this on a positive note is, on Easter we had some friends over, and their son is a 19-year-old college student. And I have to tell you, folks, this young man and friends he talked about, they get it. They realize the screwing they're about to get, for their futures. And they're not looking at a Democrat. They're not looking at a Republican. They're looking at the right person. And this young man, I was shocked at what he knew. But here's the interesting part. In my opinion, he sounded more libertarian than he did a Democrat or Republican. So I think, Rand Paul, if he can get into those college campuses, he's got a real shot at making a difference.
Well, when I'm looking at this too, Michael and X, is that Rand Paul can bring the younger generation in, and certainly
Rand Paul can win states like Pennsylvania, and that's the scary thing with this guy.
So Republicans are going to have a choice, Michael. I mean, because I got to tell you, if he comes down to Hillary and Bush, I'm not.
Well,
I'm
Hillary's president. That's the bottom line. If it comes down to Hillary or Bush, Hillary is president, and the Republicans don't want to face the fact right here and now that that's the choice, and that's what's going to happen. So do you want to make Hillary president, Republicans? Because if so, then go ahead and send up Bush as your front runner. But at the end of the day, you're going to lose states like Pennsylvania. Remember, no Democrat has ever won the White House without Pennsylvania, as no Republican has ever won the White House without Ohio. So, these are the things you have to look at. If you want to win Ohio, you're going to need a Rand Paul. If you really want to knock the Democrats off their game and take Pennsylvania, again, you need a Rand Paul. But if you just want to hand over the election and say, we quit, we'll see you in 4 years, then go ahead.
Yeah. Michael?
Well, it's their arrogance, Frank, of the Republican leadership. They think they can keep doing the same old thing over and over again. and they should start to realize that the results are pretty bad,
right?
And that we need some new blood in there, whether it's a Rand Paul or somebody with new ideas and some energy,
right?
Not the same.
You're absolutely right, Michael. But again, that arrogance will let them say, you know what, the nation is tired after 8 years of Obama and the mess he has made. There is no way in the world that the country is going to pick another Democrat. And with that mindset, you're handing the election right to Hillary. I'm telling you.
I agree with
Frank,
you, Frank. You know,
a good thing that you mentioned, Frank. It's just the idea that, remember, with Hillary Clinton, there are a lot of people on the left that fear the Clintons being back into it. You know, again, not everybody on the Democratic side are brain dead. You know, they understand the corruption that goes along with the Clinton name and the dirty tricks and all of the other things that go along with it. So, you know, what do you do when you have somebody on the stage? You think Hillary's in favor of more bombing or less bombing than whoever her opponent will be? Will Hillary stop the, abuse of civil liberties, curb the NSA spying? You know, what are her platitudes going to be when she's on the stage? Or is it just going to be business as usual and Wall Street gets a free rein?
That's exactly what it's going to be. I mean, we've seen her track record. We've seen her as First Lady. We've seen her as Secretary of State. We know exactly what's going to happen. There's never been an honest thing that's flown out of her mouth yet, so why would we think it's going to be different now?
And her whole platform is how bad the Republican Party is.
No, her whole platform...
How guys like Rand Paul has decided that, it's better to shut down the government rather than do what's right.
No, her platform is pick up one of my signs. It comes with a free bottle of Preparation H.
Oh, jeez, Frank. One of the things, Michael and X, is that the, if just say it did come down to, once again, Hillary and Bush, I mean, you're going to have Republicans that are going to hold their nose and vote for Bush. And on the flip side is going to be the same thing. They're going to hold their nose, and Democrats are going to hold their nose and vote for Hillary because one can't vote for the other. I think with somebody like a Rand Paul, you're going to bring other folks in.
Right.
They might listen. Let's do it this way. If you're a Republican, you might not agree with everything that Rand Paul says, and you might hold your nose and vote for Rand Paul. But guess what? There's going to be a lot of independents, libertarians, and Democrats that will. That can vote for somebody like a Rand Paul. That there's no way I could ever see myself voting for a Jeb Bush.
At the end of the day, he'll support and defend the Constitution.
Michael, we're done. You got the last word, my friend.
God bless all.
God bless everybody. We'll see you next week.